According to YouTube, the majority of the people who watch my videos are female, and I wanted to give a male perspective on an issue that often comes up for women. And that is, will a man have less respect for me if I have sex with him on the first date, or perhaps even before the first date? Well, the answer to that is, according to surveys, no, 67% of men do not have less respect for women who have sex with them on the first date. But more importantly, I want to point out that any man who has less respect for a woman who has sex with him on the first date is, in fact, a beta male. Because alpha males don't think that way. The way an alpha male thinks is, well, of course she would want to have sex with me on the first date. A woman has a lot to gain by having sex with me. Having sex with me is a wonderful thing for a woman. Why wouldn't a woman want to have sex with me as soon as possible? You could even make the argument that some of the more dominant alpha men would even respect a woman more if she had sex with him on the first date or before the first date. After all, he would think that since having sex with him is a wonderful experience for a woman who has sex with him early is a woman who knows what she wants and gets what she wants quickly. So that's reason to respect her. Now, I'm not saying that it's always the case that a superior man will actually respect a woman more if he had sex with her on the first date, but it is pretty much always the case that only an inferior man would respect a woman less if she has sex with him on the first date or earlier than that. Why? Well, the inferior man doesn't really think very highly of himself, and he somehow thinks that a woman is somehow making a mistake by having sex with him. He doesn't even think about what's in it for her. He only thinks about what's in it for him, and he somehow looks down upon a woman who would have sex with him on the first date because he is somehow some sort of lowly vermin. These kinds of guys are true beta or omega males. Now look, I know that the term beta male isn't always the most scientific thing, but in this regard, it really is true that only an inferior man would judge a woman negatively for having sex with him, or for having sex with him on the first date or before then. It is not the kind of thing that a truly dominant alpha male would think. Some of these guys are so pathetic that they will think if a woman would have sex with him on the first date or before the first date, she would do that with anybody. It doesn't even occur to these guys to think, hey, maybe there's something especially sexy or attractive about me that would make her want to have sex with me, and that she may not do this with just anybody. These guys have so little self-respect that they don't even think that way. They think so little of themselves that they don't even think about what's in it for a woman to have sex with them. Now, when I have sex with a woman, I always focus on what's in it for her. This accomplishes a couple of things. First of all, it does make you less selfish because you're not focused on your own sexual needs or what you want. You're focused on her sexual needs and what she wants. But it's also more dominant because you realize that, yes, there actually is something in it for her. Now, I had been thinking about making a video on this topic for a while, but what made me finally decide to do so was I came across this article by Maya Kamala, if that's how you pronounce her name, and she discusses this whole issue about how some men do judge women negatively for having sex with them on the first date, and she says that it's related to the Freudian concept of the Madonna whore complex. Now, I'm not arguing that she's wrong, but I wanted to make this video on the male perspective of this because I really wanted to underscore the fact that the only types of men that think this way, the only types of men that actually have less respect for a woman who has sex with them on the first date or before then, are men who are inferior and who have very low self-esteem and self-worth. And this is a perspective that I don't often hear talked about that much. I also want to say that nobody is 100% alpha or 100% beta, and just because you think in a way that is beta or inferior, it doesn't mean that you can't change. But if you are one of these guys that actually thinks that there's something wrong with a woman who has sex with you when you want to have sex with her, then I would highly suggest that you change your attitude and you start respecting yourself a little bit more than you already are. I also want to send the message to women that you don't need to worry about whether a man respects you less if you have sex with him on the first date or before then, unless you want to attract inferior, weak men who have a low self-image and a low sense of self-worth into your life. If you aren't interested in having a relationship with a guy like that or attracting a guy like that into your life, then you don't need to worry about it. When a man judges a woman negatively for having sex with him on the first date, it doesn't really say anything about her, and it speaks volumes about his own sense of inferiority and his low sense of self-worth. I do want to add that I do agree with many of the conclusions that Maya comes to in this article. I agree with her when she writes, and then you get the spreading of harmful myths like the idea that men have higher sex drives, that women are naturally more passive, that men are the hunters, yada yada. The fact that women continually suppress their inner huntress to make men feel less threatened, like we're letting them win at ball, does not help matters. And the fact that generation after generation continues to socialize boys and girls to enforce this does not help matters either. I do think that while it may be true that society still judges women more harshly than men for being promiscuous, it is basically a harmful myth that men have higher sex drives than women. And overall, I think there are a lot more similarities between men and women than there are differences. I think that we don't really emphasize these similarities enough, and if we really want gender equality, we should focus on how the genders actually are similar rather than always focusing on how the genders are different. I think that the genders aren't nearly as different as a lot of people assume they are. Also, please don't make the straw man argument that I am saying that you should have sex on the first date or before the first date. Look, if a man and a woman go on a date and either the man or the woman doesn't want to have sex, then they shouldn't have sex. All I'm trying to say is, if you're a woman and you're worried about a man judging you negatively for having sex on the first date or before the first date, you don't really need to worry about this unless you are trying to attract weaker, inferior men with self-esteem problems. So if you like this video, go ahead and give it a like, and if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel, click the bell icon for notifications, join the Zork army, and together we shall take over the world. I upload 5 videos a month. You can also catch me on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat at ZorkMid123.